ensuring equal protection and establishing a national care leavers offer, we can do even more to ensure that everyone growing up is given the opportunity to flourish. Thank you. Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given that the opposition amendment has been accepted, I'm not going to stand here and outline my disgust at what has happened with regard to the historic grooming scandal. The British people want answers, so I'm going to ask questions of the Labour Party, and several of them. Will the government commit to urgently deporting all guilty foreign nationals involved, including family members who were aware of the crimes and therefore complicit? Wives, sisters, mothers, cousins, if they knew and said nothing, these individuals are just as guilty as the rapists themselves. Will the government commit to stripping citizenship from dual nationals implicated and deport them as well? Race or religion must protect nobody. Will the government commit to pausing all Pakistani visas and foreign aid into the country until the Pakistani government agrees to accept any of its deported citizens that have perpetrated these crimes on British soil, and also imprisons these rapists and their accomplices in Pakistan, however they see fit? Will the government undertake a full investigation into officials who had knowledge of these crimes yet failed to act? Establish a specified task force to root out this wicked evil. Don't just fire these vile individuals, prosecute them. How many girls are estimated to have been raped? Is there a tally for the overall number of rapes? Horrifyingly, it may well be in the millions. We just don't know. How many vulnerable young girls are estimated to still be involved in these gangs? If there is no estimate figure, why not? Will a regular update be published detailing ongoing prosecutions and sentencing? Will the government publish a full nationality breakdown of those convicted for such offences, along with the location of their crimes? How many known foreign rapists per town, per region? Will they publish a breakdown of the immigration status of those involved? On what grounds were they in the UK? Do they have previous convictions? How many foreign nationals found guilty have been released but not deported? And how many re-offences... I'm going to carry on if that's right. How many re-offences have occurred since release? How many of these monsters are walking on the same streets as the girls they raped and abused? One report suggested a victim had come face to face with her rapist in a supermarket. Is the government comfortable with that? How many of the foreign rapists were in receipt of any form of state benefit? Would the honourable member give I'm going to carry on if that's right. How many released currently receive any state benefit? How many children have been born following a rape from these men? How many have been given access to the child against the mother's wishes? And how many have used the child as a route to remain in the UK? Will the government commit to preventing this in future? How many deportations have been blocked due to the rapist's right to a family life or other ECHR influences? Will the government set up a dedicated, confidential and accessible official process for whistleblowers to safely raise their concerns regarding foreign rape gangs, ensuring it is safe, secure and easy to find? Will the government release all court transcripts relating to these cases so the British people can understand just part of the horror for themselves? How many of these documents have been hidden due to the cost of release? This should not be an obstacle to transparency on these trials. Will lifelong sentences now be considered for those British citizens involved in the crimes, but also those in positions of power who acted to cover up the scale of the abuse? Which politicians, local and national, had knowledge of these events but failed to act? Again, going as far as to actively conceal what was truly happening. These are the facts that the British people want to know and the British people deserve to know. All of these questions have also been submitted in written form, and I look forward to receiving open and transparent answers. The mass rape of young white working-class girls by gangs of Pakistani rapists is a rotting stain on our nation. This is not about Elon Musk. This is not a bandwagon of the far right. This is about the victims and ensuring swift and brutal justice is delivered to those demons responsible. It is about distinguishing between right and wrong. I finished.
Sarah Champion.
I want to start by welcoming this bill because it actually
does address a lot of the underlying problems that we have within our schools' education and indeed protection of children. I welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to make this a child-centred bill. I've got to say, I feel disgusted by what the Honourable Gentleman has just said. Can you imagine if you're a victim or survivor listening to that? I'm sure his intent is to get to the truth and get justice. But the language, please think about who hears our words. Sorry, everyone. On the 26th of November 2024, in her letter to the chair of the Safeguarding Practice Review Panel, the Secretary of State for Education said, "The forthcoming Children's Wellbeing Bill is a vital mechanism for improving the lives of vulnerable children. There is a renewed government focus on tackling child sexual exploitation, which will necessarily include our response to the ICSA recommendations." I want to take this moment as an opportunity to say to the Secretary of State which of those recommendations falls squarely within this bill, and I hope with cross-party support we can encourage the Secretary of State to adopt them. ICSA actually published 20 recommendations that were trying to address the whole of child sexual abuse in this country, to get support for those victims and survivors, to get early intervention to prevent the crime, but also to get the prosecutions that we all so desperately want. Recommendation 1 was for a core data set. Currently, the bill's single-use identifier number is not the same as a core data set. There is a need for a unified set of data which allows authorities to better understand the prevalence of abuse, identifying patterns and informing evidence-based policy making. What we currently have is a patchy, fragmented data system that hinders effective prevention and intervention. ICSA asked for the creation of a single core data set that includes the characteristics of victims and alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse, vulnerability factors and the settings and contexts in which the abuse occurs. Recommendation 2 would be for a Child Protection Authority for England and Wales. Recommendation 3, a Cabinet Minister for Child Protection, and that needs to be someone that cuts across all the different departments, because that's where we're failing children right now. We do not have a joint approach when it comes to child protection. Recommendation 4, public awareness campaign, and cultural awareness is included throughout the recommendations. We need to make children aware of the risks that they face, but we also need to tackle cultural insensitivities and much worse wherever we find them. This is one that's particularly pertinent to me because I'm very proud that I got the previous government to make sure every child from primary school had relationship education. However, in September 24, the DfE published an independent evidence review on teaching relationship education to prevent sexual abuse, and it found that still teachers were not receiving the adequate training. There are not the adequate resources for those teachers, and so I urge the Secretary of State to use this bill to do something about it. Specifically, will she ring-fence RHSE training budgets? I will, of course.
Thank you for giving way. A fantastic organisation in my constituency of South Devon called Child Assault Prevention. I worked with them when I was working at Devon Rape Crisis. They had to close their doors 2 years ago because their funding was cut by the previous government, and they were doing really, really vital work with primary school age children, teaching them about the dangers of sexual assault and how to avoid it. So I would really welcome the government looking at reinstating funding to organisations like this who are working in this very sensitive area with young children.
And I would absolutely recommend and echo what she's saying. It's so important. Recommendation 13 is on mandatory reporting. And I was keen to hear the Home Secretary say that this was going to be one of her objectives, but it also needs to cover those in all positions of trust. I'm very, very concerned as well that if we just have mandatory reporting without the resources for the administration to actually act on that, it becomes no more than a tick box exercise, but also the very teachers and training staff that should be protecting children get penalised, worse, prosecuted as a consequence. I would like to say that ICSA